Let's take a look at one of the most powerful features for animation in LightWave. It's the dope sheet. Now, I refer to the dope sheet as the dope track's older brother. It's a lot more powerful and allows you to see and edit all the items, channels, all the keyframes in the entire scene. So let's head over to the scene editor. Okay, and I'm just going to go full screen. I've loaded up this scene that Johnny Gordon put together because it's got a lot going on, a lot of animation, a lot of keyframes, a lot of items. Okay, and I'm just going to slide this over to the side by clicking this little bar and dragging. Okay. Now, one thing that you're going to want to do is watch the video that talks about the items tab and how to manipulate and edit this. I'm going to kind of skim over that as I work and focus just on the dope sheet. But we've got there's a video on the items tab that you'll want to take a look at. Okay, so the dope sheet gives you an overview of all the channels in your scene. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop to list view here, and so we can see all of our items, and let's pick an area to work with. If I want to zoom in, I'm just going to, if I want to zoom out, I'm just going to pull this bar and I can slide across and see my scene, and notice these little blocks get smaller. If I want to zoom in, I'm just going to stretch that even smaller, and each block becomes bigger. Each one of those blocks is a keyframe. It's a little bit easier to see than the little sliver on the dope track or the timeline, and that's why a lot of artists prefer working with the dope sheet, because it's just easier to see the individual keyframes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is select the Aborigine in the scene, and I'm going to hide everything else, and then I'm going to drop down. Let's see, let's unhide. I'm going to drop down the Aborigine and grab all of his bones and then hide everything else. Okay, so we're going to work with this for starters. Okay, so now that I have all of this open, let's zoom out so we can see more keyframes. And I can start working with individual areas. I can set the time that I'm looking for here, 0 to 851. Well, I can change that just by typing in, just like doing in the timeline. Okay, we've got our frames running across the top here that are numbered, so that we know that if we come here, we're on 67. Okay, and each one in this left column is the actual items. Okay, so if I wanted to select all the keyframes for, say, finger 01A left, I just have to click right here. If I want to grab all of these, I'll shift click, and I've grabbed all the keyframes. It stops me from having to draw a bounding box select mode, because I can just click the whole thing. If I want to grab every item's keyframes in this frame, I can just click here. If I want to get a range of frames, I can shift click and I can grab here, and that's what will be selected. Okay, there's this little handle up here, and if I go all the way over here, there's this little handle here. Okay, and I can change this, and this is my render range. Okay, so by changing this, let me go over to render globals, and now it's from frame 58 to 748, and I'm just gonna move this, say, to here, and now it's from 20 to 748. So you don't have to open up the render globals panel and change the render range here. You can do it right here in the dope sheet, which is a pretty handy item. So if you're wondering what these little flags are all about, it's our render range. Okay, so now we have a basic idea of how we can move around. I can just select items and all their keyframes. I can select multiple frames with all the items keyframes in those frames. I can also say, well, I just want to work with this area, and I'm just left clicking and dragging over the area that I want to select. Okay? And I'm selecting all of these frames. Okay? Now, if nothing is selected and I right click, I can move the time here. So I'm moving the slider here. I can select everything. Okay, I'm gonna unselect all. I can view all. Okay, which crunches everything down so that I can see it. I can also select an area, and I can zoom to selection. so that I can quickly get to where I want. I don't have to worry about coming down here. So if I want, I can grab this area and zoom to selection. I'm going to view all, then come over to this area, and I'm going to zoom to selection. Okay, so you'll want to take advantage of the right-click menu. I've got Edit in Graph Editor, so I can launch the Graph Editor. I can do a numeric offset. So if I come here, I can type in numerically how I want to offset these keys. I can numerically time scale. If I want to do it interactively, I can just grab this handle and squeeze it in. Okay. If I want to offset interactively, I just click and drag, and I'm offsetting those keys. Okay. If I erase is different than delete, and we'll want to know the difference between erase and delete. If I were to delete these keys, everything would shift. This range of frames would shift everything that follows it would then get shifted this number of frames, and I could, by doing that, I could delete all the work that I set up on my animation. So I rarely use delete when I'm in the dope sheet. What I usually use is erase, because erase will remove those keyframes, but notice nothing else shifted. Let's come over here and delete. Notice these keys just shifted. I've just destroyed my timing in other areas of the scene, and I don't think Johnny's going to be too happy with this because he had a really nice animation here and I just destroyed it. But let's go forward. So I can, of course, cut, copy, right? So I can cut and copy keys as well, so I can paste them later. I can zoom to selection. Quantize, if you had fractional keyframes and you can select an area and quantize, and what it does is it snaps to the nearest keyframe. So it's a good way to fix your fractional keyframes. Okay, so again, I can just select an area. I can change the timing. This is going to speed things up. This is going to slow things down. I can shift to new areas. Okay, if I want, I can go. Let me view all. Okay, I'm going to just squeeze them in a little bit, and then I'm going to offset it so that this is still lining up there. Okay. So that's just a quick look at navigating through the dope sheet. Again, it's a really fast way of working with working with all the items in the scene and all the channels. Don't forget, you can come over to the Channels tab and even go and pick up light intensity and things like that. So if we were to go over to, let's go over to the gun, okay, and I'm going to zoom in. Drop down the channels, come over to, say, oh, the gun flash. Let's go over to the gun flash and go over to intensity. We're able to go and adjust the intensity. Instead of going to the graph editor, we can do it right here. So we can see keys that we normally don't see on, say, the timeline or the dope track. Here's an example. Let me zoom into here. So zoom to selection. These little black tick marks, now they're at the top, but you could actually get them in the center. It would be representing a fractional keyframe, and you can go and adjust the you can use quantize to get rid of the fractional keyframe if it was, say, sitting in the center of a particular keyframe. So again, that's just a quick look at the dope sheet, and it's a really powerful tool for managing and editing your keyframes.